Before we get started, I would like to introduce ourselves briefly because Ms. Fatma did a great job already. So thank you for everybody for having us in this presentation, which is entitled Writing Practices Post-COVID-19, Exploring Third Grade English Teachers' Perceptions. Of course, this presentation or this research was done through the last year. So I'm closing my cam actually, so I will get focused on the presentation. Okay, dear Safeya, can we move on to the next slide, please? So before we get started, this is our presentation outline. We will have a brief introduction to the issue over here. Then we have a literature review. Methodology will be explained, the findings as well, and then analysis and discussion. Finally, we will conclude with some limitations and recommendations to be done in the field. I don't know if we can like mute the sound of like the alarms every now and then, if this is possible.
I am not sure actually. Let's see. I don't think I can, but I'll work on it.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'll proceed, okay? Next, please, Safeya. So to start with, actually, as we said, we are talking about post-COVID writing in grade 3. We all know that the shocking news of COVID-19 invaded our lives and infused unexpected changes all over the world. And of course, educational sectors were among the most affected. In language education in specific, we've witnessed some concerning changes that favored receptive skills over productive ones due to the virtual instructions and, of course, the interaction nature that was changed during the online era. Fortunately, many countries that have strong economic and infrastructure like the UAE managed to provide students with virtual education, so education did not stop. Along with these distance learning circumstances, challenges, and opportunities, actually, teachers and students managed to go on with education. Next slide, please, Safeya. Okay, so students' physical return to school actually was much awaited after 18 months of school closure. This was situated mostly the previous year when students were instructed to go back to this physical education. So third grade students received online learning and stopped going to school in the middle of grade 1, which was actually a critical stage for improving basic skills. So educators around the world expressed their concerns after students' physical return to school, as instructions at that time were restricted as well by health considerations, especially immediately after they joined schools back. Everybody was still scared and precautions and protocols were resuming. While approaching the new normal, as it is mentioned in many researches later, in the post-COVID-19 era, there was an insisting need to consider education anew in light of the emerging opportunities, challenges, demands, strengths, and shortages. So students became as well competent in using technology. However, many of them got their readiness, foundations, and penmanship affected by the pandemic and the virtual learning, or the long time forced virtual learning. Next, please, Safeya. No, the previous one there. Okay, thank you. So the online teaching of writing as a skill was questionable before the pandemic. Many studies already reported that academic writing in specific in a second language or a foreign language, as in our context, is challenging, and students fail to match, let's say, or to synthesize all skills that are needed with the elements, requirements, writing genres, and so on. So by comparing students before COVID and during COVID, within writing classes, writing instructions, and achievements, the writing scores, quality, fluency, and attitudes were affected compared to their peers, according to Scar et al. This was a study conducted on writing in specific. Thus, the effects of COVID-19 on EFL and on writing instructions and practices needed to be investigated and addressed. So the purpose of this case study, moving to the next slide, please, Safeya. Yeah, actually, this here we're talking about the contribution of our study after we set the purpose. Why did we want really to do this one? It emerged actually from some personal experiences as well as like current demands in the field. So this case study is expected to contribute to the literature as it tackles a timely issue worldwide. It also raises educators' awareness of relevant problems and supposedly or hopefully provide possible solutions. So this study is expected as well to contribute into the literature of the UAE and the region. So moving to our 3 research questions. Thank you, Safeya. So here we are talking about how do 3rd grade English language teachers view their students' writing experiences before, during, and post-COVID-19? Then what are the challenges in writing practices that those teachers dealt with after students physically returned to schools? And finally, what are the repair strategies they had to use to mitigate the gap between online and face-to-face teaching of writing? Moving now to the literature review, I'll leave you with our dear Safeya. Here you go, Safeya.
Thank you so much, Eman. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our presentation. So I will take you through the literature review. So there has been an increasing emphasis on how writing is taught, especially in EFL and ESL setting. And as we know, there is already a debate between advocate of process and product writing and how it should be taught. So to begin with, the product writing is a traditional, systematic, and explicit approach that focuses more on writing mechanism. So here, the requirement is for the student to copy a model text and produce a similar one with high quality, rather than focusing on other aspects of the writing. So until the 1970s, writing was taught separately. It was taught less frequently, and it wasn't part of other language skills or subject. It was more in a form of repetition, drills, and exercise. At the same time, product writing, as I said, it focused more on the quality of the writing more than the process of the writing. And teachers here prefer students to write individually, and they follow linear instructions. They move from one stage of writing to another at the same time. Like the whole class, they plan together, they draft, and they write. The good things of product writing is that students can improve their writing quality, so they produce writing text with high quality and accuracy. And the focus here on the product of writing, as I said, and all are going through the same stages of writing. When it's come to the process writing, which came as a reaction to the product writing, here the focus has been shifted to focus on the functions of the writing. So here, the focus is the content, meaning, and the language. And process writing value classroom teaching activities and how the language is used through the writing stages, like planning, discussion, pre-writing, and writing and drafting. And here is writing is not a linear process. So students have an opportunity to go back and forth through the writing stages, and everyone is writing at their own pace. So it's not like a whole group activity. Everyone is writing on their own, but they can write collaboratively. Students can have many chances to edit each other work, give each other feedback, and learn in collaborative environment. At the same time, the focus here is on the communications, content, meaning, more than the quality of the writing. And they have more than one chance to write a draft, focus on the creativity, and they use the model text for comparison rather than for copying and produce a similar one. And as I said, they are writing for real audience. They chose their own writing topic, and they give and receive feedback in a collaborative environment. And the writing tasks are short, simple, and direct, and they focus more on the meaning, communication, and content. Moving to the affordance theory, which is like was guiding the study. So the focus of the theory is on the behavior or environment or both. And when it's come to the COVID-19, affordance theory shed light on behavior of teaching and learning and how it's affected by environmental changes, which was in the study case, the COVID-19, and how psychological, social well-being and academic aspects are crucial to the affordance of learners, like during the pandemic, how these aspects were influenced, not only during the normal time, but also during the pandemic. And this theory linked to learner autonomy, language transfer, and language learning. And these three aspects are really important, not just during the regular time, but also during the pandemic and how they were impacted. When it's come to the education during the COVID time, we saw how the education system around the world were impacted during the COVID-19. Some countries likely were managed to provide virtual learning. Some of them wasn't able. So teachers were forced to modify and adapt to their teaching method and instruction, and to adapt online teaching method. And they were looking for alternative practices, and at the same time, they were trying to manage the students' well-being and their own well-being. So during the pandemic, student-student relationship and student-teachers interactions, they were impacted negatively. At the same time, there was influence on classes, activities, and resources. And when teachers were shifted to technology and to use online teaching, the focus wasn't only on the teaching method, but it was also how to manage mental, emotional, social, and well-being of the student at the same time, which is really challenges for the teacher. And as I said, during the pandemic, there were many challenges that teachers faced. Some of them were adapting to complete e-learning system, the low participation of students, and the difficulty of choosing assessment, how to assess students online, and how to manage classroom, because some were participating, some were not, and there were internet connection errors. So that made teachers to look for a plan, how to work to teach a student, and at the same time to fill the gap which resulted during the pandemic. There was studies done in 2020 and about educational online situation, and it was found that the more emphasis was on the receptive language skills like listening and reading, but the productive skills like writing and speaking, they were ignored during the pandemic. As you know, writing is difficult and challenges, not just for the second language learner, but also for the native speaker, because writing requires students to have competency in the writing process in element and characteristic at the same time. And students' mastery of language is indicated by their ability to use it and how to demonstrate their skill as well. So if learners do not master English language, so writing even become more difficult to them. And other challenges that were reported on writing, like looking for ideas, using appropriate vocabulary, and distinguish between idiomatic expression, grammatical style, and actual language use. Now, Eman will take you through the methodology part.
Many thanks, dear Safeya, for this detailed and comprehensive literature review. For the methodology, actually, we have chosen a qualitative style through a case study. So it employed a case study qualitative design that aimed to explore third grade English language teachers' views on writing instructions prior, during, and after COVID-19, especially for their physical return to school. So this case study fits the research. That's the justification of using it, because we asked teachers specifically what were the differences, challenges, and repair strategies, and so on. So the study took place actually in 2 Ministry of Education schools. One of them is a public and one is private in Al Ain city in the UAE. And this was done in October 2021, last academic year, which is 2021 and 2022. Okay, which was the first, in fact, the first term students returned back to schools. May I ask, please, attendees to close their mics? Thank you. Okay, so for the participants, actually, or the sample, it starts with a sample. It is a convenient sample that was reachable by both researchers. And of course, we did not approach anyone. It was a purposeful sample because the inclusion criteria to recruit participants were like having English teachers currently teaching grade 3, have the experience with writing practices, instruction, and so on prior, during, and post COVID-19. So because it's significant, of course, to recruit participants who have experienced the studied phenomena, so we'll have proper data, samplings the sampling worked well this way. And of course, we had participants who volunteered to take part in this study. We had 5 participants, 5 female English language teachers of grade 3, and we created pseudonyms for them. Can we move to the next slide, please? Here are some demographic information about the participants. We noticed that all of them are qualified in education, one with teaching proficiency diploma, and 2 have bachelor degrees in education and early childhood, and 2 with master degrees. Their teaching experiences varied from 3 to 14 years of teaching experience. And as we can see, they come from regional and international countries. Next slide, please, Safeya. Okay, so again, as we used a qualitative design, our instrument was a semi-structured interview that guided the 5 phases. Guided by the phase framework of Calio et al., which included 5 main questions describing student COVID-19 writing experiences with a range of sub-questions. The instrument was validated through like a jury of 1 university instructor and 2 PhD students. They read, revised, approved the tool before it was used. It was also piloted over a participant before the beginning of the study, which guided more like specific follow-up questions for the research or the interviews, which was done for trustworthiness. For data collection, we used, first of all, an online tool, Google Forms, that included demographic information of the participants. It included the informed consent form where participants agreed to participate. They signed that off and chose the mode of interview. They were asked if they would prefer a face-to-face or virtual interview, but the 5 participants chose to be interviewed face-to-face, so they were individually interviewed. For data analysis, data was presented in a narrative form as per Cresswell and Poth 2018, and this was actually done because of the nature of the study. As you can see, it follows a chronological order, speaking about what was before, during, and after the pandemic. It was also analyzed into themes as per Bernard and Ryan 2016 study, or that follows many ones before. And the themes were like, the final enlisted themes were 5 actually, and they will be introduced with Safeya in a while. For ethical considerations, all participants signed an informed consent form. We followed validity reliability guidelines. And of course, before we start the study, we obtained the UAEU ethical clearance under this number. So let's have a look at our participants' responses under the 5 themes. Here you go, Safeya.
Thank you, Eman. So the findings of the study are presented in a form of themes. The first theme is natural unfolding of writing experiences. So here, how its writing was looked like before the pandemic. So one of the teachers said, before COVID, writing was taught in stages with adequate time and feedback given to students. We work with a mind map to plan. We did draft, we edited, and peer checked, and we proceed with a final copy. Another teacher added, the writing process before COVID was helpful because children actually could get a grip of pencil where they have to learn gripping, eye coordination, writing on the line and between the lines. And another teacher added, before COVID, we teach them how to write the sentences, and you know where is the weaknesses point in the writing and how to improve it and how to give them extra exercises about some certain point. So as you can see, before the COVID, the students, they were practicing writing through holding the pencil, writing on the line. So they're physically doing the writing, and they were involved in the writing stages of mind mapping, planning, drafting. Moving to the second theme, the dilemma of virtual writing. So here, I will take you through how the writing looked like during the pandemic. So the writing process was just thrown out of the window. For them to write like in the laptop is not the same as when they come to the school. So this is was said by one of the teacher. Another teacher added, most of the students didn't do the task alone. Their parents helped them. Maybe the mother wrote the writing task instead of the kids. However, another teacher said the opposite. She said students didn't get the desired amount of support at home during distance learning, which led them to lack vocabulary, enhancement of spelling development in terms of English language. So as you can see, some students, like, they receive a lot of support from their parent. At the same time, others didn't receive support at all. Depend, like, if their parents were available during student school time. So, but after COVID, now we don't know their level really. There is a gap. So this is one of the teachers saying, like, after COVID-19, they weren't sure about the students' writing level. Moving to the third theme, writing in the post-COVID era, the new normal. So here, how the writing looked like after the pandemic. One teacher said, now after the students, they are back to school, she found that the students, they don't have the ability to write. They are not that patient to stay and write a paragraph. They make a lot of mistake. And another teacher added that the return to physical learning has led teachers to make them revise the basic, like punctuation marks, sentence formation. And they have written a big red flag that would be like, they don't know how to hold the pencil. They have forgotten how to form the alphabet, even differentiate between upper and lower case. So this is like that was the reality after the pandemic. They forget the basic, how to hold the pencil, to write a sentence, to distinguish between upper and lower case. And a teacher added that they may have procedures to keep a student. They were worried about how to keep the students safe because it wasn't allowed them to touch the stuff, to keep distance between them and the students. And it was difficult for them to check their handwriting. So that was after the pandemic. They couldn't help with writing because all of that, like precautions. Moving to the fourth theme, which is the shocking new reality of writing. One of the teachers said, I'm having problem with them writing the letter. Some don't know what the sound is. When I say the sound, they look in the air and concentrate like they don't know it. Other challenges that were mentioned by the teacher was exposing students to the rules of writing. I felt like they were learning for the first time. Another teacher added, the students cannot write out 3 letters words, and they cannot sound it. They cannot even pronounce word properly. What they say is what they write. The return to physical learning has led teachers to make them revise basic stuff like pronunciation and formation. So this is what was going on the classes based on the teacher discovery. Like students found it difficult, they forgot the sound, they were trying to write what they pronounce, even though it wasn't correct. And for them, writing a word like 3 letters, 4 letters, word and more was difficult. Moving to the last theme, which is bridging the gap, the remedy phase. So here they were like some of the suggestions that teacher gave to fill the gap between online learning during the pandemic and when the students were back to the school physically after the pandemic. So it's going to take ongoing practice for students to understand and grasp the writing technique and convention. Daily practice is key in making writing activity interesting for them, which allow them to be creative. So one of the teachers believed that daily practice will help them to get back to writing and at the same time to keep the writing activity creative and interesting to the student. Another teacher added, I also have been using sentence building as a starter activity to remind the students of when to use capital letter, to leave finger space and full stop. So a part of the daily routine is like how to build sentence. And she used it at the beginning of the class. So they revise together daily how to build a sentence and what the things they have to consider. And another teacher said, a daily strategy that I used at the start of the lesson for a student to write a sentence, read their sentence aloud to me at the beginning of the lesson to practice writing, reading, and writing skills. It's like students write and they read it out loud. So they practice writing and reading at the same time. It's going to take ongoing practice of student to understand and grasp writing. As you can see here, all of them agreed that the daily practice, it will help the student to catch up what they have missed and help them to get back and remember the basic of writing, which they lost during the pandemic. Now, Eman will take you through the discussion part.
Thank you so much, dear Safeya. As you noticed from the findings and the responses by the teachers, there is an indication that students faced writing challenges in the absence of basic and advanced writing skills after their physical return post-COVID-19. In fact, we were surprised with the amount of weakness of students when they came back. So grade 3 or 3rd grade students still need help with holding pencils, tracing letters, writing simple words, matching letters with sounds, forming simple sentences, and writing full paragraphs. Can we switch off the mic, please? I'll mute it. Done. Okay, sorry. So actually, speaking of this, EFL writing is already reported as a challenging skill. It requires learners to use many linguistic skills simultaneously, as we said before. That was confirmed by many studies. But the 5 participants described such challenges as way better than the status quo. So students' writing skills were negatively affected by COVID-19, and that aligns with Scar's et al. Study. As you can see, we have 2 of our participants who gave like nice description of the whole situation. As Fatma said, students felt crippled in terms of writing. And Ruth was laughing about it, saying my online was a bit, they totally lost it. My writing process was just thrown out the window. Next, please, Safeya. Okay. So linking this to our theoretical framework, like starting with the affordance theory, we noticed that the environment, which is the new situation triggered by COVID-19 and the lockdown and virtual learning, that has affected the behavior, which is the norm of teaching second language writing or foreign language mostly here. The methods, as Core 2018 said, and Rivers as well. In fact, we noticed that most participants tended to resort to traditional structural methods like drilling to accelerate the remedial stage and try to get students back on track. In fact, the teachers like avoided using process writing because it needs students to be ready for it. So they looked back or used product writing more at this time because it was more feasible and they need to finish with a curriculum, go on with lessons, something they have to cover in a certain time. However, prior to COVID-19, the process writing, like Jade commented, like before COVID, writing was taught in stages with adequate time and feedback. So she compared the previous time to the recent one. Then more traditional methods were followed during the virtual learning, specifically when teachers couldn't reach out to students well. And as we said, during parents not only supporting, sometimes it's interference in this regard. So Fatma commented that online answering mainly encouraged them to answer in one line or one word, and that did not allow learners to elaborate and express themselves profoundly. Next, please, Safeya. So Fatima argued that most of the students aren't keen on writing anymore. She used to see her students more excited or enthusiastic to write, express themselves on a piece of paper, but teachers found it now more convenient to use copy responses, repeat words for spelling, and that aligns with product writing principles more than the process writing ones. So actually another participant said, like it is a second language, you must do a repetition of it. They will get tired of it, but it is going to be a lifelong lesson for them, which takes us back way more than we thought. So on basic writing skills and penmanship, that was somehow shocking. Like Ruth, for example, said that they still cannot hold the pencil properly. They spent a long time looking for letters if they were typing on a laptop during virtual lessons or when they used hybrid modes. Then, according to the interviewees, there was a noticeable difference between students who got support at home during the online experience and those who were not supervised at all. In fact, we believe that both cases, and one of the participants approved that both cases hampered students' learning. They were not very useful because either taking the students' role in working and doing things did not help them, and leaving them without supervision did not help as well. So, for example, Zainab said maybe the mothers wrote the writing task instead of the kids. Fatima said when students were assigned a task, their parents would return the assessment or answer for them. And again, this was similarly stated in post-COVID studies showing that writing as a passive skill is really concerning and it negatively affects students' skills due to the pandemic and this lockdown. Next, please, Safeya. So on a different note, let's say that there is something that was a bit similar in the interviews or something that was not really clarified by participants, although follow-up questions were asked and reiterated. The online teaching experience during COVID-19 and its challenges were like similarly responded to by participants with the current situation, which was at that time their physical return after COVID or post-COVID to schools, yeah. So this confusion emphasized the significant effects of being disconnected for this long time. It highlighted a gap, a clear gap actually, especially in productive skills. We said that they are speaking and writing. Here in the study, we are focusing only on writing. So teachers did not clarify this learning stage due to one or both reasons actually. Because teachers could be immersed in the current situation and its challenges that they saw both stages merge together, or teachers could be unsure about whatever practices they were using during that period of like emergency, and they had to stop teaching on the spot and shift to online practices, instructions, and they were not really ready for that. So this actually validates many recommendations by many studies on education, on English, and on writing, speaking about like that teachers specifically and students should be trained to master online teaching, to deal with any circumstances or emergencies that may occur later on. We never know what may happen later. And to conclude, Safeya.
Thank you, Eman. So according to the study participant, the issue caused by the pandemic influenced teachers and students alike, and especially the young learners. So being away for almost more than 18 months resulted in serious consequences for early primary grades. And teacher comments on lack of basic writing skills show a highly tangible situation. Those teachers tend to go back to traditional writing instruction, seeking for final product rather than the process of writing, because the pressure was high. They were back after the pandemic. They were worried about following the guidelines, things that were there, and at the same time to cover the curriculum. So they thought using the product writing would be time save and easier than the process writing. And teacher cannot afford the time and effort for the process writing when they are required to complete the assigned curriculum and support the student at the time, as I said. For the recommendation, the study recommended English language teacher to implement remedial strategy to bridge the gap of writing instruction and practice. So there should be remedial strategy to bridge the gap between online learning and back to school learning when it's come to the writing. English language curriculum should be modified to include basic language listening that will help the students to catch up with what they have missed during the pandemic. And a need assessment should be done at the beginning of the year in all grade level in order to find out about the students' level and what's need to be done as a next step through the remedial materials and plan. Fourth, teachers have to follow SMART goal with simple, reachable, and constant step to help the students. There should be consistency, and they should regularly exercise with the students and practice writing. And with remedial plan that will help the students to catch up with what they have missed. And finally, further research need to be carried out, a similar study, but on a large scale, to gain deep insight into English teachers' view on writing instruction practice regarding COVID-19 across the UAE. And when it's come to the study limitations, the first limitation is teacher responses are not that comprehensive. and they didn't elaborate on their responses, although they were asserted that their input will be used only for the research purpose. And the second limitation is that the study only used semi-structured interview as a data collection tool. Triangulation of data like using other different tools, may provide the research with more valid and representative view of writing practice and instructions regarding COVID-19. And these are the references that we used for our studies. And thank you so much for joining our presentation. And if you would like to contact us, these are our email addresses.
Thank you so much, dear Safeya. If you have any question, Ms. Safeya and I are ready to answer. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat room.
I think there was one question, but you already answered that. What were the implications of your study?
Implications, I think that was like according implications of your study for assessing third grade, there's writing.
Yes.
Yeah, actually we've, Safeya, would you like to take this or I go through it?
It's okay, man.
Yeah, okay, great. So actually the implications were more focused on the curriculum for English teachers and talking about how like further studies, next slide, yes. So in fact, if after we do a needs assessment for students and we know where their level is, we need to move forward from there. I cannot deal with students who are in grade 3 with the skills that they are assumed to have while they are still, let's say, in the level of grade 1. Most importantly, the assessment methods should match the teaching practices. We need to make sure that I assess students on something they know. I cannot go somewhere else and be surprised later that most students failed. Unfortunately, this may not be helped when we have unified exams or so on. That's why this should be modified or fixed from scratch from the beginning through the curriculum to have a logical improvement for students when we know. And I'm not talking only about summative assessment, I'm talking about formative assessment. This would be more important to help learners understand how they are assessed according to what they learn in class properly, not on something else that an adult needs to help them go through. I hope this answers your question.
Eman, also to add, like the teacher also recommended, like they need to go back to the basic to remind the students how to hold the pencils, letters, sound, to start with capital, finish with full stop, and with the daily practice that will help also to fill the gap and to catch with what they have missed during the pandemic.
True, exactly. That's great. Thank you, dear Safeya, and thank you for all the attendees. That was great.
Thank you, Eman and Safeya. That was a very insightful presentation.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much, dear Fatima. Is there any question?
I think.
Or somebody opened the mic, maybe? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. I shared the link for the next sessions. Thank you, Eman and Safeya, very much.
You're most welcome. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.